All right, everyone. This one's a little bit more funny than the last one with the Wall Street Journal. It's like, you're being openly dishonest. This one's a little bit humorous because of who it involves. Carlos Maza, actually, who's a Vox writer. He's under the handle Gay Wonk, actually. Now, apparently what happened is Steven Crowder referred to him, and he used the term queer to describe him. Now, I'm thinking to myself, this isn't really an insult. This term is used, it's literally part of the LGBTQ sort of thing. What does the Q stand for? It's not necessarily an insult. It's used by people to describe themselves. It can be used in the term genderqueer. Or whatever. It's kind of newspeaky, I suppose. I don't really give a fuck what people do, like, in the bedrooms or what they consider themselves. So I'm not going to get into the moral side of it because, I'm not a moralist. I really don't care what you do. It doesn't bother me. But here's the thing. What Maza did then. And keep in mind, this is important. He works for Vox. So he's working for, technically speaking, a competitor of Steven Crowder's style of content. That's ultimately what these attacks often boil down to. It's like Becca Lewis and the Data Society. They're funded by the New York Times. Who does the New York Times compete with? A bunch of YouTubers. At this point, the main competition of any corporate media site isn't some other corporate media sites. Like Fox, their main competitor's not MSNBC. It's not CNN. It's fucking Paul Joseph Watson or something. Including with, I think that Fox and Breitbart and groups like that disproportionately suffer more. Specifically because there tends to be a right-leaning take from a lot of the larger political commentators on YouTube. That is very much true. I would class some of them as libertarian. It's not standard conservatism, so to speak. And when Fox's audience average age is 69, not necessarily as likely as maybe younger people to be on YouTube or on BitChute or something. I'm sure they're using Minds.com. Grandma's got a Gab account at this point. It'd be very funny. I'm sure that it happens. No offense to any of my older viewers. I know that there are a lot of you out there. It's fine. I'll be older someday too. Instead of sitting here like this, I'll have gray hair, hopefully still a full head of it because I want to look like Gandalf. I will let my beard grow. But here's the thing with Carlos Maza. He turns around and says, well, YouTube is hosting this. It's very odd because he's attacking me. By the way, if you want to flag it, here's the video in which he says it. So, you've got a writer for Vox, supposedly a journalistic, credible, mainstream publication. Yeah, I'm going to try not to choke up my laughter here. Calling for the rating of another user, and he hasn't been kicked off Twitter. Now, how odd is that? Because if Steven Crowder came out and said, look, Carlos Maza is trying to attack me. Hey, here's the status if you want to attack it. He would get banned. He would, at the very least, they would lock his account and force him to remove the tweet. They'd probably temporarily suspend him, and at most, they might outright ban him. And this is what, you've got to understand, this has happened before. This happened with CNN and Infowars before Infowars was deplatformed. Do you remember that article? I think I talked about it at the time. I think it was a couple of months before Infowars was kicked off a lot of these sites like Facebook and stuff, when their pages came down, YouTube, what was it, Spotify, I think was one of them, Apple, the actual store. About 2 months, I think, or 3, before that happened, CNN ran an article about Infowars and how they were breaking the rules on YouTube. Now, who died and made CNN the arbiter of what does or does not constitute a TOS violation on YouTube? I'm not sure. I guess that gives me the power to determine that Carlos Maza is clearly breaking Twitter rules by targeted harassment. Literally, I mean, if you were to call for a raid on another person on Twitter and it got flagged, it would be removed and result in at least a temporary suspension. It absolutely would. It is explicitly against the terms of service. They determined that, Infowars is breaking the rules on these, I think they listed 4 videos. At the time, 2 of them got taken down. They then appealed, one of them got restored. Now, this is in the wake of a CNN article. And at the time I pointed out, it is very, very funny to me that people aren't noticing the big part, which is CNN and Infowars are direct competitors for the same basic kind of content. Infowars is more infotainment, but CNN and Infowars both deliver news, both brand themselves in a political essence, at least at times, and do other events too. There's spin-offs, some of it's more comedic in the most literal sense. They have the merchandise and everything. They compete in the same niche. It's just that Infowars is 100 times smaller in everything but audience. You know, Infowars is like a dozen people in a few small offices. CNN has the, you know, the billion-dollar apparatus, and yet their audience slot to slot is lower than that of Alex Jones or Paul Joseph Watson. It's hilarious. Again, there's a reason why they're attacking us, because we're winning. But that happened. You have a hit piece written. It's sort of like the Becca Lewis hit piece. Now, I don't think that Becca Lewis in her wildest fever dreams believes that she's going to get, you know, 60 plus YouTubers actually deplatformed. It would literally destabilize the whole site. So many millions of people would be so pissed off, it would probably collapse YouTube's political commentary altogether, and all of the political and news content would move elsewhere, other than the mainstream stuff that nobody cares about. You look at CNN's page there. Look at their supposedly gargantuan subscriber base, and then look at their view count video to video. Yeah, there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. I think that there's some inflated numbers going on. I think that there's some buying of subscribers, or rather YouTube just randomly subscribing people to them because it thinks they're interested in it. I think that that actually has begun to happen. So Carlos Maza is targeting harassment at Steven Crowder. Under their rules, he should be banned from Twitter. Banned or suspended or whatever. And I know suspension and ban are not used interchangeably on Twitter as they are on most sites. It's like if you're banned from YouTube or suspended from YouTube, it means the same thing. You're gone. You're no longer on the platform. It only has to do with like the severity of why you're gone in some cases. Like, oh, you were uploading 10-hour-long videos of you spinning your pecker around versus, hey, you said something offensive. I think that would be the differentiation. Facebook. You're banned off Facebook. You're suspended. It's the same fucking shit. On Twitter, they mean something different. He should be punished for this. Will he be? Probably not, because he's a verified user who works for Vox, and because Twitter does have a political bias. We've got to understand, I personally think that largely the higher-ups on these sites, they do have a political bias. Now, on the lower level, it's not as evident. What happens is that the corporate media, like Vox, which is biased, goes after people selectively, and they almost always seem to be going after people who compete with them. Isn't that very funny? They're not going after some random personality who doesn't do anything with regards to news and just sort of goose steps around and actually is hateful. They don't talk about that side of YouTube, you know, maybe the Brother Nathaniel side, or Amron or something like that. No, all they do is they want them sandboxed, and that's what YouTube has done to them, but they're still there. Whereas someone like Crowder, you know, because he's got a huge audience, because he isn't actually a hate-filled individual, again, I say this as someone who disagrees with him on certain issues, same as like Gavin and many of these others, not particularly radical, they just cast him that way. He gets, you know, fucked up sideways, basically. And keep in mind, Crowder's popular on YouTube, but he's not primarily a YouTuber. His own show is not just on YouTube. It's like some people, mainly, it's like, take my own content. I've branched out now. I'm on BitChute, I'm on Gab, I'm on Minds, I'm on Steemit, I'm on Dailymotion, I'm on, you know, all sorts of sites. I'm on Facebook, although I don't do anything there, and Twitter, although it's like, you know, who cares? It's tenuous at best at this point whether you're allowed on their platform because they're so messed up in how they apply their TOS. I started out, though, primarily only being known as a YouTuber. My original, you know, sort of, hello, I'm making a video line was, I'll write YouTube, not I'll write everyone. There's a reason for that. I switched it over because I realized, hey, it's impossible just to be a YouTuber anymore. There are too many other platforms. Things are becoming unstable because of groups like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Voxes, and the HuffPosts. They're alarmists, and they're seeking to whip people into a frenzy over non-existent hate, racism, bigotry, sexism, and stuff. They're seeking that because they want an excuse to destroy their fiscal competitors. These are for-profit corporate entities. They are companies. They want to fuck their competitors over. Wonderfully for them, their competitors tend to be more individually based as opposed to corporatized, making it easier to make it look like it's a legit attack. Well, it's not. It's really a competitor trying to destroy another competitor through underhanded means. It would be like if Steven Crowder said, hey, audience, today on my video, I'm going to put a link to Carlos Maza's page. You should go flag his shit because he's constantly trying to fuck me over. It'd be the same thing. Only he'd get in trouble for that. Maza probably won't. He probably won't get, you know, what he deserves, which is you violated the TOS. You should be punished for it. It's the way that it works. Play by the same rules. Saul Alinsky mode, I suppose. Then he blocked me. And he blocked apparently basically anyone else who was challenging his status, who's pointing out, hey, you know, this is targeted harassment, blah, blah, blah. I retweeted it. Now, hopefully people were flagging. It is targeted harassment. He's like, hey, go flag this video. How much more targeted can you be? And by the way, like with PayPal dropping Infowars and with the depersoning that's happening to some of these commentators, it is a form of harassment. It's a criminal thing at this point, or should be considered that. I hope Trump applies antitrust legislation. It's harassment. If you and a group of other people, spurred on by the corporate media, some group of NGOs or whatever, follow somebody around the whole internet just to deplatform them, that's stalky. That's creepy, dude. At some point, it just becomes creepy. It doesn't make you look heroic or good. It makes you look like a creeper. You're stalking people and harassing them around the whole internet in hopes of literally ruining their livelihood. Well, that doesn't make you a good person, regardless of what, excuses you may give. That's just, again, it's just weird and stalky. That's about all. Peace out.